Hello and welcome to this very first official episode of Forward Observer TV. Is this going to become a real, normal, routine thing? I don't know. That really does depend on how many people we can reach and teach via YouTube and other video services. The first thing that you can do to make Forward Observer TV a reality is by simply subscribing so that you don't miss out on future videos on SHTF, intelligence, security, and defense. The second thing you can do is make sure that your friends or other interested parties watch this episode. So please share this video and the next few as well. I'm going to be dumping a ton of knowledge today, so let's get started. This is probably not the very best topic to get started on, but it is the oldest, if not the oldest, is one of the oldest articles on Forward Observer. This acronym is called BESTMAPS, and it's a tool that we can use to generate some ideas for local intelligence. It was never really intended to be used for local intelligence, but I find that it really gives us a good push towards our goals. It also begins to maybe expand our minds when we start thinking about our information requirements. So the problem is, how do we know that we're covering the bases when it comes to local intelligence? Well, in the next video, I'll answer this question in detail. But for now, if you're just getting started, we can use BESTMAPS to think our way through some of the information that we may need to know for our area. And this is actually one of the best ways to get started thinking about the utility of intelligence. You can start putting this information in your area studies. I'll include a link in the description that explains why area studies are so important. It's well worth your time, and I should do a video on that as well. Without further ado, here is BESTMAPS. I'll discuss these in greater detail. We have biographical, economic, sociological, transportation and telecommunications, military geography, armed forces, political, and science and technical information. Let's start with biographical, right up at the top. Biographical information includes names and identities, education and work history, familial relationships, and other associations of key individuals in your AO, or your area of operations. I'm going to continue to use AO, so if you're unfamiliar with the term, it means area of operations, and you should probably write that down. This is one way to start thinking about the key human terrain in our AO, and I'll cover a bit more about the human terrain in just a moment. Next is economic data. What are the economic drivers in your AO? What are the major industries? Who are the major employers? What are the economic conditions like unemployment, household income, property values? What are the negative pressures on the local economy? What are the things that are boosting the local economy? Are there systemic risks to economic security and employment in your area? During the next recession, or maybe during some economic or financial crisis, how is your area going to be affected? If we can start answering some of these questions, and these are just some of the questions, then we can start developing more accurate expectations of the future. In short, this is the utility of intelligence collection and analysis. After that, we have sociological information, which is a large chunk of the human terrain. So there's the physical terrain, things like mountains and rivers, and then there's the human terrain. It's a lot more than just demographics and age and race. The human terrain includes things like local attitudes and beliefs and opinions of the people who surround us, particularly those who exert influence within our AO. Next, we have transportation and telecommunications, which is part of our critical infrastructure. Transportation includes primary and secondary roads and other lines of drift. Just because there's not a road there doesn't mean that it can't be driven on, and just because there's no path doesn't mean that people can't walk it. Lines of drift are natural travel ways, regardless of how improved or unimproved they are. And telecommunications looks at primarily lines of communication, cell tower, phone lines, Wi-Fi locations, satellite communications. Where are they in your area? These are some things that we need to begin thinking about. Now, BESTMAPS was made for the military, actually for human intelligence of strategic value, and so it's heavily military topics. Still, this is a really good tool for us as well. And so for us, military geography is going to include military installations and facilities. And I would also include police and other security locations as well. We're talking about geographical locations here, not who's stationed there yet. So be sure to map these locations in your AO. In fact, that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make. They may have a list of these locations, such as a National Guard armory or police substations, but plotting these locations out on a map overlay gives us a much better sense of their locations in terms of space. It's one way that we can visualize raw data. I'm such a huge fan of plotting things on an overlay, and we'll have to dedicate another video to that in the future. Next, we have armed forces. Now, these are the units or personnel at those installations we identified in the previous step. Traditionally, this would be the table of organization and equipment, or TO&E, for those veterans who are watching this video. But for now, we just want to know how local military and police units are organized. How many units are in your area? What types of units are they? For instance, are they military police? Are they infantry? Are they transportation? Etc. How are they staffed, and what equipment do they have? The same goes for your local law enforcement. How many sheriff's deputies are in your county, and how many of them are on duty or patrol at any given time? What areas do they or do they not patrol? It's a pretty good idea to take a look at this stuff if you haven't already, because it gives us a sense of their operational capabilities. Case in point, one county we looked at had 8 part-time SWAT officers who trained for 8 hours a month. If anything above a domestic dispute popped off, then those guys in that area knew that there would probably be state and maybe federal law enforcement coming in. And this might be a very valuable thing to know for emergency preparedness. Now we have political, which is traditionally strictly political. But in our day and age, we really ought to be adding those quasi-political organizations that influence politics, especially at the local level or the county or maybe even the state level. We need to look at current political leaders on the local level. How are they influencing the populace in your AO? How do they affect the security in your AO? How will future or proposed efforts affect your AO? These are the people who will presumably be making decisions during an SHTF scenario about the area. So the more we know about them and their beliefs, the more we can refine our expectations of the future and begin to parse out the more likely courses of action from the less likely courses of action. The bottom line is that these people make decisions that affect you, and for that reason, we need to understand them. Lastly, we arrive at science and technical data. This could include critical infrastructure like energy or power plants, water treatment facilities, things of that nature. There's a long list of things that this could require. And we also know that technology can be disruptive. So one question I would look at for my area is, how can technology disrupt our security? How can it disrupt or how can it lead to political or economic or social instability inside the AO? So BESTMAPS was an acronym developed for strategic intelligence value by the military, but I hope you see that it can be used as a tool for our mission of emergency preparedness and community security. BESTMAPS is a really great way to help us flesh out our intelligence collection and analysis. It helps us to consider topics that we may not have considered and gives some structure and organization to all the intelligence information that we really should be collecting and analyzing, especially on the local level. This concludes the very first official episode of Forward Observer TV. If you enjoyed it and you want to see more, or maybe you want to have us do some long-form episodes, then let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe and share this information with your peers, share these episodes with your peers, and then have them do the same. If we can generate enough interest, if we can reach and teach enough people through these videos or through these episodes of Forward Observer TV, then we will continue. If it's a colossal waste of effort, then we will shift fire and move our efforts elsewhere. I appreciate you watching. Signing off for Forward Observer TV, this is Samuel Culper, and until next time, stay out front.